So, Nichiren, who was he? How does his life and culture at the time of his arrival in the age of Mappo, how is it that he formulates his opinions on the teachings of Shakyamuni Buddha with specificity on the Lotus teaching itself, a lineage that he discovers more deeply in his journey to Mount Hiei through the teachings of Dengyo from Tendai Chi and Miao Dengyo, and the politics and power plays of government changing from really a almost theocratic government of emperors and imbued holiness, right, to shogunate, samurai government, extremely authoritative, right? Authoritarian, I mean. Authoritative. And dictatorial, in fact. In collusion with this spiritual component that Buddhism has now broken down in Japan and become a tool of worshiping, mystical, magical practice, like religion, which was not Shakyamuni's aim ever. But you know that has happened to Buddhism all over the world, as so many other things. When it becomes populist, loses its core aims and becomes a form of mental entertainment, really. Magic and mysticism and all of that. Research the religions of any country, and you find that they're all based on folklore and even the vaulted religions of Islam and Christianity and on and on. They have their beginnings from very ignorant, basic, magical thinking about life and the world. Buddhism throws all of that out. It says, hello, wake up. What's important is the way we live this life right now to its fullest. All of the other stuff is just, it's childish nonsense. Shakyamuni never entertained many questions that were related to that because they just weren't worth his time. And so, you know, for that to start to see in Nichiren's, our day, our modern age, to see that degraded, degenerated kind of Buddhist flag waving when in actual practice, complete non-Buddhist thinking was very upsetting to Nichiren. And we've seen that as we've been reading this book published back in 1916 by Masuhara Anesaki, a Japanese scholar, teaching and visiting professor at Harvard, had assistance of other professors working at Harvard to put out this work on the life of Nichiren. So, you know, why do we study it? Well, it helps us gain a context, and I think it helps us for our own practice gain an insight into the nature of what are real obstacles rather than obstacles are just what we want. And that comes up a lot in the again, I'm so congested, my apologies. But yeah, there's a very strong tendency in human beings, whether it's Buddhism or anything else, to view life as something that's imposed upon us, and that therefore that somehow justifies our praying or requiring or requesting of life to give us stuff. the true meaning of entitlements, right? Not entitlements that are actually. I'm not talking about Social Security and that kind of thing. That's a humanity entitlement. That's a device of government to allow us to invest in our own lives. That's very logic and reasonable and rationality based. No, that's not the kind of entitlement I'm talking about. I'm talking about the entitlement that we should just get what we want. At the whim of whatever we think we need or want, we should just have our prayers answered by getting stuff. That's the Santa delusion. That's the mind of a child. Why we bring children up in a world to think that way, that's a deeper problem, isn't it? And this is what preoccupies Nichiren. If we could just get people to think correctly about how amazing life actually is as it continues to instantiate. This is what Shakyamuni was talking about. Once you shift your focus on life happening, then all of that other stuff, though it's very much a part of samsaric living, it no longer has that strange hold on your essential experience of life. Right? Why should we experience moment to moment our amazing life based on our experience of it based on what we own or what we hope to own or what we don't own? Oh, I'll never be what the hell are we talking about? You are everything right now. And all of this stuff, whatever it is, maybe you have no stuff. You'll always have stuff. That's samsara. This is stuff, right? The problem is our mentations, our attachment, our greed, our avarice, our constant attachment with ownership, possessing, having, getting more. Don't lose. He has more, she has better. That's where all our stress and anxiety comes from. It's not that we're going to erase all of that or that it shouldn't exist. It's not nihilism. What Buddha was identifying, what Shakyamuni was identifying, which identification is our basic problem, isn't it? But we can use it to our advantage if we identify that in-between thing in our minds, which is the only place it lives, that conditions our very idea about self based on what we possess. There it is, right there. It's okay to have stuff. It's not that we shouldn't have anything. It's our attitude about having. What is our intent in the very next moment of our lives? Is it about having? Or is it about living? So you've heard me say this a million times. Buddhism is about the mind, and it's about attitude and intent. Make sense? So right now we are well into this book, and Nichiren is really dealing with the Lotus Sutra and how he is to present this teaching to the people who have been so deluded for so long by terrible teachers on the materialism of their life. And their religious practice, because now Buddhism has degraded to just another religion, a way of hoping for a better life after death. Listen to the words of that. That should just break your mind right there. I'm going to live better after I die. What? No, you're living now. When you die, no live. I mean, how obvious is that? So, Nichiren is in the midst of some deep writings just to get his thoughts wrapped around how to approach people who have been so traditionally, culturally inoculated, if you will, with this mystical thinking and get them back over here to Shakyamuni's true teaching. And he's talking about it, and he's pointing out the disease in Japan, certainly, but he speaks to our time, doesn't he? And this is what's interesting about studying Nichiren's life, is that it's so equatable with our own, right? How should I practice? What should be my mindset? My life is so intertwined into the lives around me. So how can I influence the lives around me without just inculcating violence, without getting just hard walls of resistance from people who go, don't say that, can't hear that. I somehow have to entreat in them a desire to know what I have, not what I know, but what I have found through my knowing to be available and a desirable thing for them to reach toward, to climb out of their mysticism and magical thinking towards something they understand as having more value. How do I do that? How do I teach that? Not an easy problem. So, if you'll recall, I talked about this chart that I have online, right? The chronology of Buddhism. You can go get it at threefoldlotus.com on the core study page. But we're in this earlier part of his development here, this time period. And we'll get to this, but we're not there yet. So anyway, if you're interested, you can go download that for yourself as a PDF. It's about a 40-inch by 20-inch document. It might grow to 40 by 40 if I add stuff after Nichiren's death. Don't know. Let me know what you think. Anyway, so let's continue. We left off with him talking about the situation now that he was trying to... he really identified with the Lotus Sutra, obviously. And he saw in it, or he went to it, more accurately, according to this writing, for answers on how he should proceed. And he, at this point, we left off where he was talking about the state of Buddhism that he was experiencing in his life in Japan, and to the Japanese people, how the government had let them down, the elite had let them down, the teachers certainly not only let them down, led them down the wrong path, totally negating Buddhism, really. And so we continue there. Are not all abbots and bishops men of this kind? The men he described as people who are living on their egos rather than merits of Buddhist practice. Sorry, there may be noises in the background. That's just... is it raining? We've been having... It should be snow, actually. It's so cold. You all know about this bomb cyclone that's hitting everyone. All right, let's back to this. Observe how some of them pretend to be enlightened and are believed by the people. They claim to be fully enlightened and teaching people Buddhism, and people, we like to follow the popular, the identified superior. We like authoritarianism. Isn't that strange? We might do a bit of study on how the fact that our very existence owes to this attraction, accumulating amalgam of energy that wants to instantiate. Where is that want coming from? What is that instantiation about being that's so ingrained in the very atoms of our being? How does that lead to a desire to be told what to do so that we can be absolved of responsibility, really? I don't want to have to think about that. Give me a job where they just tell me what to do and I can get my paycheck and, oh, it's so easy. Just, I don't have to think, right? What is that ingrained in the samsaric construct of our momentum? It seems to be a default mode in, certainly if you're an archaeology or paleontologist, student of the history of mankind, that's arguably, in a strange way, it's a civilizing kind of groupthink, kind of nurturing. So we can see a lot of benefit to that. And yet it's also, at the same time, a very limiting kind of, can't blame me, kind of existence. That's born of fear. So are the two compatriots like the North and South Pole of a magnet? Interesting, because if it weren't so, Buddhism, the logic of Buddhism, the rationale of Buddhism should just be universal. Everybody should just be doing it because it's so clear. The only reason it isn't is because of this attachment thing. This wanting to relieve ourselves of the effort. Just tell me what to do, I'll do those things, and, oh, isn't that what religion takes advantage of? This is why I keep saying Buddhism isn't a religion, because Buddhism, as you well know, my friends, requires effort. Right? You don't go to Walmart and pick up some Buddha-ness and have enough for the week. Buddha-ness, clarity of mind, living life to the full, isn't just a dozen eggs on the shelf. It requires work. Why do I say all this? Because this is where Nichiren comes in. He wants us to make that same realization for ourselves, because nobody can do it for you. But you have to have some desire for enlightenment. You have to have some inkling that there is better than just rote going through, falling through life, waiting for things to happen. Certainly, that's going to tire you out, right? So he goes on, and he's reading this from, I believe he's quoting the Lotus Sutra here. Yes, what the text tells us. Buddha's disciples beholding this amazing vision of the So he's talking about the treasure tower and that area of the Lotus Sutra. In the evil days of the ages full of turbulence, there will be many fears and dangers. Well, here we are. There will be men possessed by devils. In other words, their intent and their attitude, right? That's the devils. Not as a default, but certainly what he's pointing out here. And they will abuse and insult us, although the willing authoritarian public doesn't perceive themselves as abused or insulted. But how many people, what do they call it now, the Great Resignation? How many people have discovered that working for the man or working for others, making others wealthy and so they can get all the stuff that we want, it's so messed up. They're starting to do it for themselves. Well, it's a form of moving towards self-determination, isn't it? Those people who have taken off, started their own little business or their own way of making money so they're not working under the thumb of somebody else or some corporate entity, certainly those people are ripe for Buddhism, true Buddhism, because they understand that to be truly free, to be truly alive, is determined by our own behavior, with our own efforts. Buddhist in making, yes? By revering Buddha and putting confidence in him, or in Buddha-ness, and by wearing the armor of forbearance, in other words, making the effort, don't cave in because you're having a hard time. That's part and parcel of samsara. See it as an opportunity. See it as cleansing karma, getting rid of the muddy boots you're wearing. We shall all endure these perils for the sake of proclaiming Namo Myoho Renge Kyo. This text says it right in the Lotus Sutra. We shall never be fearful in sacrificing our bodily life. What does that mean? Killing yourself? No. Sacrificing your life, dying for? Come on, Christians. Get off that self-crucifixion kick. Muslims, same thing, different way. Right? Religions, it's all about self-immolation because you're just a dirty thing, you human. Religion is really disgusting when you take it apart. Buddhism isn't about that at all. We sacrifice our body, as that wording is often used in these English translations. What it really means is let go of this pathetic avarice for ownership of stuff. That's not what drives the quality of your life. If you're wearing a $500 shirt, yes, some shirts cost $500, or a $19 shirt from Walmart, doesn't make you better or lesser. That's just stuff. But humans are obsessed with it. But so that's the body. That's the sacrifice. It's not a sacrifice. It's a mental switch. I don't need that to be all I am. Okay, I'll have that. Have it. But the attachment, the identity, the selfness, the ego-ness of it, that has to go. That's getting in the way. Wear that $19 shirt just as proudly as you would the $500 shirt. Because it's not about the price or the quality of the shirt. It's about the quality of your life. This is Buddhism hammers on this. But people miss it all the time. But always regard the true way as the highest cause. Because if your life is your guide, the quality of your life is your guide, not based on stuff, but based on your life experience, then everything else, it eases up. It ceases to have a hold on your identity. And thus we shall, throughout all coming days, stand for the cause committed to us by Buddha, Buddha-ness. Shakyamuni opened this door for us. Should we not accept that awakening, that enlightenment, as the very core of what gives our life value, the treasure tower? Namo Myoho Renge Kyo. O exalted one, Boy, this guy loves his Christian rhetoric, or religious rhetoric, I should say, because it's not just Christianity, right? You may be assured, even when the vicious monks of the turbulent ages, being ignorant of the sermons preached by Buddha according to his tactful method, right? This is the Lotus Sutra, shall revile and rebuke us because we're such a challenge to their control, their avarice, their greed, their political power, and we be repeatedly driven out of our abodes, even, you're fired. I'm dead. Right? That's their power. And kept away from our sanctuaries, even then we shall endure all these injuries by keeping ourselves to Buddha's decrees. That we are the treasure tower, that we are Buddha, Buddha-ness, that we don't need to feel those vicissitudes of possessions, because that's not our life. In whatsoever cities or villages there may be any who would seek the truth, there we shall surely go. I'm trying to reinterpret this heavy religious, tither and hither and you and owl. It's so... You have to remember, this is around 1900. Huge Church of England influence around Harvard. We are the messengers. We are the bodhisattvas of the earth. We have nothing to fear from any people. We shall proclaim the truth to deserve Buddha-ness. Thou mayest be assured and rest secure. This is our vow to Buddha, Buddha-ness. Now we take these vows in your presence, in Buddha's presence, because it's always present. And in the presence of all Buddhas, you, I, all Buddha-ness, all bodhisattvas with Buddha-ness, who have come from the 10 quarters all over the world, may you, Buddha, know our intention and determination. There it is. That's Nichiren, isn't it? Well, that's you and I as well. That's the mode of our practice. That's what our teacher, our mentor, Nichiren, is showing us. Nothing he invented. He's reading it out of the Lotus Sutra. These are Shakyamuni's words. But he's greatly reminding of us, to us, what it is we are already designed to do. Thank you, Nichiren. So the author continues, Nichiren saw all this being fulfilled in himself, as you and I should, but had to anticipate yet more persecutions. Well, we may not have to anticipate beheadings, but in a way it can feel like it, right? If you're really invested in a long career and a job, and somehow, and it's in our rhetoric, folks, you get the axe. What does that mean? When you get fired, you get axed. You've been beheaded. Same thing. You think you've got your contracts all set, you're independent, and you know what I'm talking about, those of you who are self-employed. You should be more Buddhist than anyone else, because you understand the rewards of effort. Sometimes they're not rewards. You make all this effort, and then the company goes for the cheaper bid, and you're beheaded. Same thing. In later years, he referred most earnestly to the passage which tells how the preachers of the true practice should be repeatedly expelled from their dwellings because it was his actual experience. He's saying, hey, look at me. I'm devout, determined, resolved for the highest, most, how to say it, most fulfilled life. Not everyone's going to like that. They should. They should all be going for the same thing. Then we could all be amazed at life and celebrate it. But there are a lot of forces, greedy forces, power-mongering forces, political forces. They don't like that thinking. You can't be a free thinker. You have to be owned. You have to be, well, if you're going to be a good thinker, you're going to be my good thinker. You're mine. What is this obsession? But that's samsara. Thus he found all his career foretold in the texts of the Lotus Sutra, and deemed that he was faithfully observing the vows of its perseverance, also from within the Lotus Sutra. It was defining his very sense of being, his life, as it should yours and mine. This is what studying Nichiren gives us, a context, a modern context for how to be a bodhisattva now. The 20 stanzas of perseverance was his favorite expression, which he was proud to embody in his life. He formulated these reflections and hopes in an essay, and in its conclusion, his convictions were vividly set forth. Quote, it is said in the chapter in the Scripture on Perseverance, or chapter 13, that in the fifth 500 years of the practice of Buddhism, there would appear opponents of the truth of the three kinds. The present time is just in this period of the fifth 5 centuries, and I see clearly the existence of the three kinds of opponents. It is said in the fourth facile of the teaching of the Lotus, even in the lifetime of the Tathagata, there are manifold animosities shown toward this teaching. Right? You've heard it in other ways. If they were willing to stone and drive Shakyamuni Buddha out of their towns, how much worse would that condition be in the modern times? How could it be avoided? How much more will it be so after his passing? Again, in the fifth facile, quote, all over the world, the people will find it so difficult to believe that they will antagonize the truth. Further on, quote, we shall not care for bodily life, but do our best for the sake of the incomparable way. That doesn't mean do it in face of losing your life. It means in face of losing your attachments. Life is what we're after. And similarly, in the sixth facile, we shall sacrifice even our lives. Because if you won't let me live free, if my choice is life or death, my choice is life, you may kill me, but it's not my choice. Do you see the mindset here? It's not nihilistic. It's not saying body bad. That's what religion does. That's why the symbol so often is of a crucifixion. Because life bad. That's not Buddhism. That's everybody else. Religions and avarice and greed and illusion. That's what religion traffics in. Because we're so easily frightened. Why are we so easily frightened? Because of all the stuff we think that makes us. It's tragic. From what we see in these passages, it is evident that we are not entitled to be propagators of the Lotus Sutra unless we call forth the hatred of the three kinds of opponents. One who does so is the propagator of the truth, and yet he is destined to lose life on this account. It's pretty stark. He's talking to himself here. And remember, this is the home of the Bushido Code. Right? Remember the samurai every morning looks to the sky, says to himself, this is the day that I die. Do you think he did that in order to find his death? No, this is the ultimate opponent that he's facing off with. Yeah, this is the day I'm to die. Screw you. Ain't gonna happen. This is how the samurai built this wall of fearlessness. Oh yeah? Today's the day I'm gonna die? Ha! We'll see about that. See, in the West, we stop at that first statement. This is the day that I die. Oh, please save me. Same disease in Asia. It just was formulated in a different way. And Nichiren is formulating it in his own way. He's Japanese. He's living in the shogunate. It's samurai all around, beheadings every day. So he's saying your conviction and resolve in the correct teaching should fly in the face of threats of your own life. Ha! This practice, this Buddhism, this truth rattle your swords, threaten me all you want. Pfft. Bozos. Fearlessness. That's what Nichiren's talking about. Fearless resolve. Don't qualify your resolve. Yeah, I'm Buddhist, sometimes, but, I don't chant all the time or any of that. I got a good job. Somebody asks you if you're Buddhist, you should hold your head up high and say, absolutely, I'm Buddhist. I'm Buddhist before anything else. So the author goes on. How are we on time? We can here see clearly how Nichiren was prepared for any perils, and how ready to encounter even greater dangers, leaving his fate to the destiny of the true Buddhists as prophesied in the scripture. In other words, right, what we've been saying. What I've been saying. Nichiren's confidence and resolve in the teachings of Shakyamuni, especially embodied in the Lotus Sutra, Myoho Renge Kyo, that was the guide stone to living a full life of truth. As a man trained in the analytic method of Buddhist philosophy, Nichiren proceeded to determine the position he occupied in the perpetuation of the Buddhist practice. How can this author say Buddhist philosophy and then with a comma, then go to call it religion? It's very confusing. So try not to be confused by that. It's just bad rhetoric. It's just horrible translation. It is the bias inculcated in the language and culture of the writer. It has nothing to do with Buddhism or Buddha or Nichiren or Shakyamuni or Siddhartha. It's the person who's writing this who's throwing this word in as though it's meaningful. After the model of his great master Tendai, deriving his material from the 5 conditions or principles of his mission. First, as to the doctrine, his doctrine was based exclusively on the scripture, the Lotus, which was the perfect consummation of all Buddhist doctrines, before which the teachings of all other branches of Buddhism must lose weight and authority. Second, as to the capacity of the people taught, mankind in the degenerate age of the latter day, our age, could be trained only by the simplest expression of truth, not by a complicated system of doctrines and rituals and blah, 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 nor by an intricate process of meditation and mysteries. Third, as to the time, his time was the age of the latter law, in which the scripture, the teaching of the Lotus, alone would remain available for the emancipation of all. Fourth, as to the country of its promulgation, Japan, was the land where the true Buddhism would prevail. That's his mission, right? And whence it should be propagated throughout the whole world. Lastly, as to the order of the successive rise and fall of systems, all other forms of Buddhism had severely done their work, and Nichiren's time was ripe for the acceptance of the Lotus as the sole authority in Buddhist practice. All the 5 conditions for the supremacy of the Lotus seemed to Nichiren to be fulfilled, and he regarded himself as the man destined to accomplish the work of realizing the prophecies contained in the Lotus Sutra. This was his conviction and consolation, yet it is noteworthy that the personal thesis is not so clearly and vividly stated in this essay as it is in his later writings. Let us cite his own words. After having explained the 5 conditions, he says, quote, "One who would propagate the Buddhist truth by having convinced himself of the 5 principles is entitled to become the leader of the Japanese nation. One who knows that the Lotus of Truth is the king of all teachings, knows the truth of the practice of Buddhism. If there were no one who read the Lotus of Truth, there could be no leader of the nation. Without a leader, the nation could not but be bewildered and fall into the nethermost hells in consequence of degrading the truth." Nichiren's own words. After these remarks, he enumerates the passages concerning the difficulties to be encountered by the promulgators of the truth, meaning to apply the passages to himself. It was these convictions that consoled Nichiren in the midst of dangers and inspired him with a firm belief in the future of his mission. Right? How many times did we read in the Gosho where threats were made on his life, and he would tell his followers, and then he would say, "This is just more validation that I'm doing it right." But his conviction regarding his destiny, as well as his remote connection with the sages of the past, remained to be more exactly defined in writings from his second exile. In the essay before us, we see a decided progress in Nichiren's trust in the Lotus of Truth, which had started on a doctrinal basis and was destined to bring him to more personal conviction of his prophetic mission. And this is how we end chapter 3, and we begin chapter 4, an interlude and a narrow escape. We'll save that, begin that with the next video. This nose. Thank you for remaining to the end, or listening to this podcast. Remember, you can listen to this podcast as an audio podcast, right? The Buddhahood podcast. Thank you for listening. Thank you for participating. Thank you most of all for your practice. doing as Nichiren did, emulating our master. Namo Myoho Renge Kyo, be your own master. Be in your Buddha-ness as much as you possibly can. Your environs will reflect that. They will support you. Don't be surprised by your life changing. It's just an equation. Do this, get that. Namo Myoho Renge Kyo. Thank you again. Don't forget to like and subscribe. It really helps grow this channel. And those of you who can, on Patreon or through PayPal Me, you see the links on the video, and support this effort to create this resource, make it bigger and bigger, so anyone who wants to do a little questioning, inform their own practice of Buddhism, Nichiren's doctrine, they'll have this massive resource, not only in videos, but podcasts and the website and the bookstore and so on. Get a correct mandala of Nichiren's inscription, not some other thing, right? Practice correctly, make the effort, all of us. Namo Myoho Renge Kyo, attain Buddha-ness and maintain it throughout the day. That's the tricky part, right? Thanks for your efforts, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye for now.